Thank you very much, everyone, for attending the WSESD board meeting. The board meeting will come to order at 6:05, and I will hand the meeting over to the Vice Chair, David Scholes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Microphones are all working? Great, thanks. The first order is to a couple of amendments to the agenda. So if there is no objection, we will correct the description of our first item, executive session, as listed at 6:05, to describe a presentation from Attorney Pietro Lynn on how the board can enter executive session at the start of a meeting. We're not going to be having an executive session. I didn't see, let me see if Attorney Lynn is here. He is here, so we will start that in just a minute. The second amendment to the minutes is that we're going to postpone the amendment of the minutes of August 23rd to September 27th in order to further research what must be included in published minutes under Robert's rules, and actually to clarify whether ours are actually published minutes. And we may invite Attorney Lynn to help us with that, so we may see him again on September 27th. And the third is that after the, Tim Mesa has an announcement, I think after the middle school leadership team. So Tim, remind me when we get there. Okay, so if there's no objection, we'll include those amendments and invite Attorney Lynn to educate us on the proper methods of entering executive session. You came and then left. We're in a number of
I can see Pietro. It's frozen right now.
I think I just got kicked out of the Zoom meeting. I think I just got kicked out of the Zoom meeting. Was it frozen on your end?
Yeah, every time somebody uses the SD login to Zoom, it bumps folks out. So I'll come back in.
She has control of this. Don't worry, she'll figure it out. Here, yeah.
Oh,
Thank you. I don't need to present.
we can see you, Pietro. Are you hearing us?
apparently not.
Pietro, can you hear us?
If you let me
We
back
can't hear you.
If you let me back in the meeting, I'll get the microphone so we can zoom back up. Thank you, sorry about that.
Recording in progress.
Unmuted.
You're good now.
Also, can you give the
I
commission?
can hear you on over at home.
Yeah, so I think they got me muted, so I'm not able to be heard.
We can hear you now.
Oh, I can hear you, great. Okay, so look, David, good evening to you. I see Frank, I know Frank. Hi, Frank, how are you? David, I think that probably the best way for us to do this tonight is for me to talk a little bit about executive session and what is required. The way the issue was presented to me was that there are some questions about when you have to make a finding and when you do not in order to enter executive session. And so I would suggest that the answer is in 1 VSA section 313. And if you look at the statute, what you'll see is that there are two kinds of bases under which you can go into executive session. One of them requires a specific finding that premature knowledge of the matters to be discussed will create a substantial disadvantage to the public or to the board. And those items are contracts, labor relations agreements with employees, arbitration or mediation, grievances other than tax grievances, civil litigation that is either pending or probable, and then confidential attorney-client communications. Now, what's interesting about all of those, and I'm looking at this very large board, what's interesting about all of those is that, you would think that some of them it would just be a given that they are subject to executive session. But what the legislature decided in the statute is, although these are the kinds of things that are generally sensitive and should be in executive session, that is the legislature, would only allow executive session where there is a specific finding of the board, parenthetically made in good faith, that the kinds of things that you want to talk about, fit these categories, and they are of a nature where this substantial disadvantage is created. Those are the times where the specific finding has to be made. And I guess the next question is, so what do we have to do to make that finding? And the answer is the board needs to vote either in one motion to go into executive session with a specific finding already built into that motion, that substantial disadvantage would be present. Or in the alternative, it can make two separate motions. One is the finding, and then the motion to go into executive session. But again, the board must in good faith find that these categories that I just mentioned are the topic, the subject matter that you want to talk about. And again, when you make the finding, the presumption is that you are in good faith concerned about the disadvantage that would be created to either the board or some member of the public. So that's the first kind of executive session in terms of process. The second kind of executive session is these subsections 2 through 9. And 2 through 9 are 7 different subject matters where the presumption is you always go into executive session if you want to. There's no finding necessary for those items. It's simply, if we want to talk about those items and the board votes to go into executive session, indeed, we are permitted to do that as a matter of law. And if you look at the statute, those things are, and I'm going to focus on the kinds of things that I expect you'll be dealing with as a board or may deal with as a board. And those things are negotiating the purchase of real estate, personnel matters like hiring and terminating, evaluating. Those are all part of executive session as a matter of right. Things that are a clear and imminent peril to the public. School academic records, so FERPA protected records, those are subject to executive session as a matter of right. And then testimony from people in parole proceedings in the parole board. That's not something we ever deal with. So look, those are the two times when executive session, or the two categories with their own procedures where executive session is appropriate and the process is specifically identified in the statute. So David, did that answer the question?
Yes, I think, yeah, you did. The point is that we can do it in one or two motions. One of the questions that came up is how do we, if the chair and the superintendent are the only people that know what the topic is before entering executive session, how does the board vote to approve the finding if they don't have that information?
Well, that's such a great question. The short answer is it can't. The board needs to know what it's voting on. And it doesn't mean that the chair and the superintendent are going to lay out all that information that you want to have in executive session, but there's a need to give what I'll call a preview of coming attractions. something that gives the board the basis to make the decision, that is to vote that there is specifically the finding, making the finding, and then subsequently that executive session is appropriate. What we can't do under the open meeting laws is just take it as a matter of faith that something is appropriate for executive session. There needs to be some level of communication. For example, if I wanted to provide you with an evaluation on a principal in one of your buildings and I am your superintendent, what I would say to the board is, or to the chair when making the agenda, I would like to provide you with an evaluation of Principal Smith and Principal Smith's job performance. And then we would include on the agenda something that would say job performance evaluation of an administrator, because this is not just the board needs to know, the public needs to know also that the board is taking something into executive session that is appropriately brought into executive session.
Great, thank you. We're running a little late, or we're almost running late. So if any board members, if there may be one or two questions, if you could make them very brief. We've got a group of middle schoolers here that we're dying to hear from.
And you want to get rid of the lawyer.
I think we're going to have you back next time though, too. I don't see any hands up, so we will.
So, if I may,
yes.
Pedro, could you give us another example of a situation where you go into an executive session for a legal matter? Do we have to state what that legal matter is?
Well, I think that it's important to let the public know generally what the legal matter is. And remember, legal matter is not enough. That it is a matter that is legal is not the issue. The issue, I'm looking now specifically at the statute, is that it is confidential attorney-client communications made for the purposes of providing professional legal services to the body. And so if there's going to be a lawyer's report specifically to provide the board with confidential communications, then we should identify that that's what we're going to do and then put it on the agenda, and then we can make that finding.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Tim? Any other questions? We've got 5 members online tonight. Okay, then thank you, Pietro. Once again, invaluable service. We'll move to Cassandra Holloway, Diane Wally, and the students from the middle school leadership team. Welcome back.
Yeah, that's people that maybe can get that.
And I can show these.
Oh, you can have it because there's Instagram.
Better.
Right. So, I didn't realize that it's behind you, so I'm gonna ask you to kind of look the opposite way for some of this, and that's okay. My name is Cassandra Holloway, and I am the director of Building a Positive Community. We were formerly known as Brattleboro. We changed our name a few years ago, partly because we wanted to expand our work to more youth empowerment programming, and so I get to share a little bit about that today. I wanted to also introduce Diana Wally. Diana Wally helps the APC with our work with partners, and she started in 2006 with the school district working on social competency development. And in 2008 is when the middle school leadership teams began, and they're still coming strong. So I get to share with you kind of where they are now. And we took it over, EPC took over, I think like 3 years. I've been working with Diana for 7 years, over like 3 years ago, and then COVID hit, right as we started. So I'm really excited to share that we're kind of back on track, and we really did a lot over the COVID, but it was really wonky for a little bit there. Go ahead and do the next slide for me. Actually, the next slide. So I wanted to first share with you about our training we just had on the 9th of August. We started last year to define the training for the Vermont After School. Matt Wolf is our Chief Voice Coordinator. We held it at Landmark. We generally held that those trainings at FIT and then Landmark was last over 5 years. And we used to have a lot more youth come and we would have diverse workshops, but we decided to last year to make it smaller and really have people that are going to want to co-facilitate, co-lead their middle school leadership teams, which are at all of the elementary schools, as well as families. And so 27 students standing here at 9 advisors. And the focus is really around how they can do icebreakers, team building exercises, learn about the different leaders that there are, right? There's anchors and there's the visionaries and there's the doers, and so they all have to kind of look at themselves and do what kind of leaders that they are and how to fall into their teams with their leadership styles. And also they think about the action plans and the panoramic survey. So we'll be looking at the panoramic survey to look at school climate, which would be intense for this team, and to create action plans and do activities there's to make a difference. So now we're going to click to the next slide. I'm going to show a video about the training.
We're here today at Landmark College in Putney, Vermont, with the Middle School Leadership Training Summer Edition.
We are here as leaders. We're going to come back to our schools smarter and better understood of how we can help and how we can bring other people into this amazing program.
People think of leadership as like me. I stand in a room full of people and I talk a lot and I tell them what to do. Yeah, that's one part of leadership, but the timekeepers, the note takers, the supply trackers, the thing, all of those different things are part of leadership, are part of creating change.
It's important because if we don't have leaders, then we won't know what to do. It'll kind of be a mess.
Because of our age, we can be overlooked, and it's just like an assumption that all kids don't really know how the world works and that they still need lots of help and they don't know what's going on, but that's very far from true. And being a part of this and being able to have my voice be heard by adults who actually care to hear what I'm feeling and saying, it helps me know that my voice matters and that I do matter.
I really hold to the nothing about us without us philosophy, and too frequently the reason that young people check out of school is that they're not taken seriously, they're not listened to, and they are not given the space to make meaningful change happen in the place where they are spending so much of their time, just as much of their time as the teachers are. And the teachers take too much on themselves, that they've got to solve everything, when there are these other folks who are inhabiting the school who have lots of ideas, but maybe not necessarily the skillfulness.
So that's a nice video. We'll have that on our website for those at home who couldn't hear it. Make sure that everybody has a chance to see that. And if you could do the next slide, please. Thank you. Next, the other way. The other way. There it is.
Right here or right
Yeah,
here?
there, yeah. Okay, so yeah, we just kind of talked about the purpose of the leadership team earlier. We do work towards having diversity on those leadership teams. I'd say that that's getting better. And also we used to do the school climate survey every year, and now it's become the panorama survey. So that's what we will look at with their teams, we did an action plan activity, which you all have a copy of the action plan with you. I think you have the one that's for the advisors, but there's one for the students and then there's one for advisors. You also have a summary of the activities that the teams did last year. Mostly teams are ranging 10 to 25 participants, and last year, presently we had 15 students and part of those leadership teams. On top of just working together to address their school climate, I want to just say that they're gaining leadership skills in general. They're facilitating team meetings, they're running discussions, they're planning activities, they're doing school assemblies. So those skills, we encourage them to continue them beyond the middle school and beyond the school walls. And we are really pushing this year to ensure that their plans are incorporated into the continuous improvement plan of the schools. So we have the implementation of that. So I think we're ready. There is another video on the road school and their work that they did. Watch that. Yeah, click right on the link there. Yeah, thank you.
And we're going to be adding from our class with the middle school leadership trainings.
This is for the student leaders on the far left. Could you click on that and hit, yeah.
My name is Laika.
My name is Adriana.
My name is Kyla.
My name is Connor.
And we're the Oak Grove Student Leaders. Last year, the Oak Grove leadership team did a lot of cool leadership things to help our school be a safe and kind place.
At the beginning of the year, we went into the classrooms and talked to the kids about bullying and what to do if they saw bullying happening.
For Stomp Out Bullying Day, we had everyone wear something blue.
We made Stomp Out Bullying posters and put them all over the school.
We also did a slideshow about the Golden Grovey and showed it in all the classrooms. We taught all the kids about the guiding principles: be kind, safe, respectful, and responsible.
We made a Black Lives Matter bulletin board.
We also made a Pride bulletin board.
We also did kindness projects. We made cards for everyone who lives at Thompson House.
We went there and sang songs to all the people, too. And we helped with the May meeting challenge, too.
We did a lot. This year will be fun. We're excited to learn and do more leadership stuff this year.
Bye!
Bye!
But we'll send that to you too. I also wanted to have Julian Egan, who's actually on Zoom right now, speak to what was done last year at the Dummerston School. Hopefully she hears me and pops on.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So sorry to not be there. I'm home with a head cold. I presented last year about Dummerston School's work implementing developmental designs, which is our social emotional academic framework. And it's also in line with FAM's and their work as a middle school. But it's based on the idea that, all of us as students and also as adults, all of us as learners need to experience autonomy, relationships. We need to be challenged and we need to have joy and fun every day. And that is what leads to a community of learners. And so this work that the student leadership teams are doing at the middle school level, of course, is totally tied into that because that framework is ideally created by the students, with adults guiding the process. So our middle school leadership team at Dummerston is called the Asset Team. And really last year was a huge year because we were coming back back together. We still had a lot of restrictions on how we were able to interact. And the asset team, in looking at the climate survey, really wanted to focus on those indicators that showed that we needed to improve students' sense of belonging at school and their sense of enjoyment of school and their love of school. So they came on board last year with a lot of, limits to what they could do because we weren't gathering all together as a school. So they worked on ways that we could experience togetherness. They were active in planning smaller school-wide meetings. We have an all-school meeting format that includes a greeting and a game, and then appreciations that celebrate our social contract as a school. So the middle school team was really part of really bringing us together for the first time in these grade level, these grade cluster meetings at the beginning of the year. They also focused on working on school-wide projects that would create a sense of, togetherness and identity for our school. And so they worked on Spirit Week. They organized a really exciting playground fundraiser with the Penny Wars, which raised more money than I've ever seen from a penny war in my whole career as an educator. They worked on Black Lives Matter Week and were part of organizing a reading project where those middle school students came into the younger grades to read stories that were part of the literature that was recommended on the Black Lives Matter Resource Center. And they posted really affirming messages about community on Valentine's Day, messages that really supported belonging and a sense of community love. And then they helped to organize our first whole school meeting. We finally had whole school meetings last year in the spring. We got together outside as a whole school. It was so exciting and exhilarating to be together. And the asset team played a huge role in organizing that, bringing people together. So I really credit those middle schoolers with a lot in terms of supporting our work last year and really carrying that message that we were all in that difficult situation together. So thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Hope you feel better soon. Okay, so next slide, please. So now we're gonna, other way. No, other way. I think you have to go up. Can you? Go the other way, Jamel. Whatever button you're pressing. Yeah, sorry. Thanks. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to talk about the quality youth development, which we mentioned when we came back in 2020, kind of where that's at, and then we'll go into the youth council. Next slide, please. You have to talk loud, all of you. So the quality youth development certification was something that we strived for with a handful of youth over about 2 years, I'd say. The quality youth development was something that was created in Vermont. It's not ours, and we strive towards it. And so the purpose of the youth quality youth development is for community to. Oh, pick up the microphone. Okay. It's not the microphone. There isn't a microphone to pick up. I'm sorry. I'll talk like this. Is that better?
That microphone won't have a zoom. One of these ones right here, if you step closer to that.
Okay. All right. I'm here. Okay. So can you hear me better now? Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So basically we work towards these benchmarks that were determined by a bunch of youth in Vermont, and some involve just like as a town giving funding to youth, like enough funding to youth programming. Do we have enough mentors through the Big Brothers, Big Sister program?
I'm gonna just, I think we can't hear you, at least with all this. I wonder if we might want to just take a 5-minute break and let the rain fall for a few minutes. Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricky, for the mic. Back to the Quality Youth Development certification. So we've achieved, when we last were here, we had achieved 3 of the 10 benchmarks. And now we have achieved 7 of the 10 benchmarks. So mentioned some of them being about the town, doing things like giving funding and to youth, and another one is having enough matches and mentors, big brothers, big sisters program, and having safe spaces for all youth, which are identified, but there's not more, but we've identified it as the Books Memorial Library and the Boys and Girls Club thus far. And one of the benchmarks that I wanted to highlight was the...
Have you resumed?
Yes, we have resumed.
We don't have the audio. I don't know what's going on. I've spoken to Emily, who texted.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it working now?
Yeah, that's just needed.
Awesome, okay, great. So I was just mentioning the different benchmarks of the quality youth development. It is on the BAPC802.org website. But one that I wanted to really highlight was the youth-friendly businesses. And so there is a criteria we have to meet, and then we submit it to the youth QYD board, and they approve it and say that we accomplished it. And one of our youth, Miriam Diallo, had created the image, and it's a hand doing a peace sign. It's a rainbow, and it says "Youth are welcome." And the QID members, which Jamel and Maeve, who you'll meet soon, are also part of the QID committee. They decided what would be defined as a youth-friendly business, and I think we have about 30 businesses in the Brattleboro area with those signs up, and they went around. And it was really cool. So that was something I was really proud of them on. And then another one of the benchmarks, which we are going to be meeting soon, is which we already met, but I have to submit the paperwork, is the Youth Council, which I'm going to talk about next. Ready? So here's some of our members of the Youth Council. Some are here with us tonight. The Youth Council was designed by youth. We had about 20 youth from the school district design the Youth Council based on a state Youth Council process that was used to create the bill that is for a state Youth Advisory Council, which the governor passed last year. So there will be a state Youth Advisory Council to legislators, and that was kind of headed through Vermont After School, and as you saw Matt talking earlier, we obviously have a great partnership with them, so we're very hopeful that our youth from the Youth Council will be on the state Youth Advisory Council. And so we have 15 youth. It's a very diverse group. I'm really proud to say that a majority of them identify as LGBTQ or BIPOC or low income or having different experiences in their life that they're bringing into the Youth Council. Their ages right now are 11 to 16, and they are creative, and they're artists, and they're advocates, and they're mentors, and they're leaders, and team members and mentors in their world right now. Like they're involved in things that are allowing them to, flourish in those areas and use those skills. But I also want to talk about their qualities, which you see there. I wanted to put them down so they don't get lost. I found them to be very open-minded, curious, empathetic, motivated, fun, committed, creative, caring, brave, solution-oriented, and wise. And I'm going to read off of the members that we have. So we have Alex here. She was talking at Alex had the red short hair that was talking at the middle school leadership training. Connor Noyes Urfer, Lizzie Elkins, Grace Arms, Janelle Smith is here with us tonight, James Chapman, Jaya Elaine, Lo Lumbra Armstrong, Maddie McKinley is here with us tonight, Miriam Diallo, Quinlan Forsham, Mae Bald, who's here with us tonight, Sumac Benavente, Thea Wapelaki, and Tucker Hessel. So that is who we have right now on our youth council, and I know Thea, I believe, is on your advisory council. So that's really exciting, and I hope that there'll be more kind of bridges of having youth that are on the board or on the advisory council, being part of the youth council. But it certainly will be having conversations with those that are currently on. So the purpose of the youth council is to really, the focus is to reach out to their peers to determine what their issues or opportunities are. So that's one of the main focuses, and then to talk to decision makers about those issues. And that can go both ways. So a decision maker group like United Way or Downtown Brattleboro Alliance or the town planning commission, any of these kind of groups that we've already started to talk to can come to the youth council and say, hey, we want to hear from youth, not just the youth that are on the youth council, but to all, as many youth as possible. And then our youth council will go and gather that information and bring it back, and vice versa. They may have something and then they need to talk to a specific decision maker. And then they're going to advocate for more leadership opportunities in the community. This is a community-based youth council, so even though all the youth right now are a part of the school district, it is open to homeschooled students or anybody who's in a private school, so this isn't just for the school district. Currently, all the youth are on the committee, or in the school district. Next one, please. So we have, like we said, it was youth developed, so we asked them, what ages should the membership be? Like, how many youth should be on the council? So what was decided by the youth council is that the ages would be 11 to 21. The purpose for the 21 is to ideally have some of the youth grow into an even stronger leadership role within the youth council. Ideally, so us adults who are older than 21 can step back. Ideally, we'd like to see it fully youth-run, at least in this age demographic. And also, 18 to 21 are going to have their own needs that they need to advocate for in the community. And then they decided that the cap should be 20 members. The length of commitment is 3 service terms a year, so it's a term. We have our youth council will be there until January, and then when the school semester ends, they can reapply or they can step off, and then we'll have another term for the second semester, and then there'll be a summer term as well. They will have a 2/3 vote to make a decision as a full council. And again, representation and inclusion is a big part of their focus, and including getting input from non-members. They developed their group norms and attendance agreement at the next parts were at the retreat. So yeah, they developed their group norms, and they talked about how to hold each other accountable and support each other for attendance. There's a stipend at the end of the term, so we talked about when they get the stipend and who would get the stipend, and they talked about also being able to use community service hours or a combination of both. And there'll be 4 standing committees, so there's the full council committee, full council meeting committee. So those youth will be in charge of designing the meetings that happen every month at the Boys and Girls Club, which is shared, offered to us, which is amazing, for free to use for the youth council. So that committee will be holding kind of the infrastructure of the full council. There's a communication committee. We just talked a lot about getting information from people and sharing it back and forth, so that will be that job of that committee. There'll be the QID committee, so the QID will continue, and then there'll be a youth resiliency committee. Currently, Diana Wally and I and Paul Smith and Ricky Davidson are having conversations about creating a youth resiliency summit, or youth resilience summit, bringing in school staff that are supporting the students and families with outside organizations that are serving youth and families. And we have decided to have youth run that summit and to have them talk about what they feel is missing or needed or offered that's working. So that is really early on. We haven't quite gotten there yet. We'll come back and tell you when we figured it out, but some of the youth from the youth council will be part of that, and hopefully we can extend that out to other youth as well. Next slide. So now I'm going to have our 3 youth council members who've waited very patiently to share. I'm going to start with Maeve and let them share.
Hi, my name is Maeve. I attend Brattleboro Union High School and I'm a 9th grader. I'm part of QYD and now the Youth Council. I just wanted to share why Youth Council and Youth Quality Development is so important to the Brattleboro area. They strive to make Brattleboro youth friendly, and having these initiatives in town make people feel like their ideas and opinions are heard and valued. This provides a support system for youth that want to make a difference. For example, one of our youth joined the Energy Committee. And Quality Youth Development and Youth Council are examples of resources teams can use in the Brattleboro area that they need to reach out.
Yeah, go ahead, second one.
Do the second question.
Also, I am dedicating my time to Youth Council and QIT because I feel like there's a need for it in the area. Being part of Quality Youth Development and Youth Council, I get to work hands-on with a bunch of youth and teens that I would have never otherwise encountered. We all care for our future generations and are forming a vision to ensure that our ideas are heard in the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maddie McKinley. I am an educator at UHS and I got the opportunity to be a member of the Brattleboro Youth Council. I would like to share with you why I'm dedicating to starting the Youth Council. I am dedicating time to starting the Youth Council because I agree with the mission of the Youth Council upholds. As stated before, our mission as the Youth Council is to provide opportunities for youth and community members to foster the well-being of our young people, promote the resilience of their families, and to reduce harm related to substance abuse. We serve Brattleboro, Vernon, Thomason, Putney, and Guilford. As I live in Vernon, there is tea night every night in the summer from 8:15 to 10. But no other activities for ages 13 and up during the school year. I know a number of youth council members are concerned about the lack of activities there is for youth to do. Getting an opportunity to work as an intern for Cassandra helped me realize that the youth did need something to do that is free and supports their needs and interests. That is why I think youth should get the opportunity to participate in youth council activities. If we started this, the amount of vandalism would decrease and kids would stop skipping classes as much because they have something to do. I also would like to share with you why or what meant the most to me about the youth council retreat. What meant the most to me when I attended the youth council retreat was not something physically, but the feeling of togetherness and the feeling of when you said something, it mattered and was valued. And if it was disagreed on, you weren't like put down on, like you didn't feel ashamed of what you said. It was talked about and it was like only if you disagree on something. There was no argument, so it felt like you mattered. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Janelle. I have no set question, but I do want to speak about why youth empowerment is so important. I feel like youth empowerment is super important because without it, we would have no power. Without power, we would have no people to control. And control is not what we need. We need a strong, standing community. And in order to have that, we need to have unity. Like a flame to a fire, we need it. If we don't have youth input, things will fall apart. Kids will start skipping classes. Things will get worse. But if we add youth empowerment, we have better decisions because it matters to them. They're often underheard. They're often put to the side and brushed off, but they shouldn't be. They should be heard. They should express themselves how they want. And I just feel like together we can do this. Together we can make a stronger community. Together we can have the most powerful community that we want.
I'm motivated now. So I wanted to end with this quote that I think we hold true to from our dear Tom Young, who's here in spirit with us, which is the quicker we turn it over to students or youth, the better off we are going to be. So I am here for any questions, or if the youth, I know you've got a scoop, I think, but yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them. Or did Diana? All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just to clarify a little, I want to say how important the collaboration with BAPC is. We've been doing the Youth Leadership Council work forever, and it's just been such a positive influence. So really appreciate the collaboration.
Moving on, Kelly gave me a script, which I forgot to read. So before we go to the, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Tim. Okay. Tim has an announcement before we go to the consent agenda.
Okay, a quick announcement. I am very pleased to announce that our fellow board member, David Scholes, has been appointed to the Vermont School Boards Association, VSBA Task Force on District Governance Standards. VSBA has made a great choice here. Those of us who know David know that he has been a longtime advocate for teacher benefits, sensible evaluation processes, equitable education spending, and innovative and effective teaching practices. The VSBA and our district will benefit greatly from his experience, solid moral compass, and keen knowledge of effective measures of governance. So thank you for accepting that appointment.
Thank you, Tim. So one of the first things Kelly suggested that I do is introduce our new student members of the board, Kaya Colby and Ben Berg, and welcome them. And any of us are available for any questions or thoughts or concerns or considerations or anything you need to know. And so welcome and thanks for joining us. And we're looking forward to the actual energizing of the advisory committee of the rest of the students that volunteered to do this job. And they're going to participate that way. So thank you for taking on that responsibility. Look forward to having, as we just heard, the student voice on the board. Some formalities before we do the consent agenda. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it's important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing the meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we will continue we may continue the meeting as necessary, or move to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. So I ask now for motion to approve the clerk's report, the approval of minutes for August 23rd and August 30th, 2022, for warrants of August 15th for $181,799.32. Warrants of August 18th, 2022 for $143,269.35. Warrants of August 29th, 2022 for $986,650.12. And warrants for September 6th of 2022 for $1,137,539.48. I also ask the motion to include payrolls for $1,249,075.90. And for August 25th, 2022 for $1,385,799.36. May I have that motion, please?
So made.
Thank you, Tim. And a second? Second. Thank you, Sean. Been moved and seconded to approve the clerk's report and the warrants and payrolls as presented. Any discussion?
There is a hand up. I'm not sure if it's in relationship to this motion or something else.
Well, it's
We'll wait. Yeah.
So, so no discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And all those opposed, please indicate by saying nay. Hearing none, the motion is passed. So the next item on the agenda is public comment on non-agenda items. We have 10 minutes for this. Kelly also asked me to read throughout. This is the script, the explanation about public comment for non-agenda items. Anyone making a comment can expect a response that falls into one of the following categories. Receive an acknowledgement of the comment with no further action planned. Receive an immediate response by the board chair or administration. The administration may be directed to contact and respond to the person. Clarification may be sought from the administration for a specified meeting. The topic could be added to a specified future board agenda. The matter could be referred to an executive session or a public hearing would be held on the matter. So again, I ask if there are any public comment on non-agenda items.
Probably why Ricky had a hand up. Ricky Rosati has a hand up.
Okay, Ricky Rosati?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So if there's a technical problem, what is the email or phone number that we're supposed to contact?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
If there's a technical issue, what's the email or phone number to contact to say that there's a technical issue?
Any of the board members, and the emails are on the district website.
So there's not one designated person for that?
I didn't understand that.
Is there one designated person for that?
No.
And my other question was about how I had sent an email to the board members asking what they thought about the new USDA contract that is available to schools to offer universal school meals with, and how that application requires them to label if the student is a foster child or an immigrant or if they're homeless. And because that can be invasive and not, like, in my opinion, I don't think that should be a requirement to access food security. Is there any alternative funding for people to apply with that isn't as invasive with their information?
I don't think we can respond to that at this point, but thank you for the comment.
So can there be a response at another time? Can it be on the agenda in the future?
I'm not sure. We'll have to take it under advisement and consult with administration. Thank you for your comment. Any Robin Morgan?
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering if we could hear a little bit from the superintendent or administrators about how many kids have missed school this year so far because of COVID. I know that they used to post a table of data on the dashboard, the COVID dashboard, about how many kids were impacted and teachers in each school. And we're not doing that right now, but it seems like it's really many. So I just would love to hear more about that.
Mark, is that included in your administrative report?
Gonna touch on that.
Yeah,
And,
yes.
and COVID in more general terms as well, around guidance. Yeah.
Any other public comment? Jamie Contois.
Hey, it's Jamie Contois, Putney. I was curious. I've just been thinking a little bit today because it's relevant to our family. We got a notice about lice in the classroom when there's one case of somebody having lice. And so I was curious if there was a way we could transfer our experience with COVID similarly into a single case notice for families who are trying to assess risk and are autoimmune. And so, and also just wanting to name that there's really great work happening in the state of Vermont right now with autoimmune families and looking at how Vermont is complying with federal law to make sure we have education equity. And so there's a webinar on Thursday night being hosted if folks are interested.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we can respond. There must be a lice protocol. This wouldn't be the first time that's happened. I'm not sure if that's something we can address it or address at this point.
Answer questions.
Okay, I could do, just speak as loudly as you can, please.
Rebecca Olmsted, the school nurse leader and COVID coordinator. So, and just to give a little background, my prior work was as a school nurse at BAMF and BUHF for 8 years. Prior to that, I worked at the Vermont Department of Health in infectious diseases and immunizations. And so what I can say is just my experience knowing about life policies in the school. There isn't a no knit policy. We don't send kids home if there are nits on the child or if there's live lice. We do notify parents. We call if their child does have nits. We don't pull kids out and do, we don't notify kids in the classroom about if a kid has nits. We don't exclude them from school. We wouldn't send them home. We know that the best place for students is in the classroom. There isn't a state policy requirement about notifying with individual cases of infectious diseases or nuisance issues like lice. There isn't a requirement to report individual cases of lice. Are there any other specific questions? I wonder.
I might have not clarified, I'm sorry. What I was trying to say is it was my understanding when there was exposure to lice, a letter was sent home to families in the class just saying, hey, heads up, there's lice and this is what to look for. And these are precautions, not that kids had to be taken out of school. And so I was curious how that system could be applied to COVID in a single case. So families who are autoimmune could just say, oh, there's a single case, kids are unmasked. And before there's, hey, Zoe, do you see I'm talking? Can you hold on? So anyway, I just wanted to clarify. You get my point.
So with disease reporting, right? So infectious disease reporting, there's a certain reportable disease list. And that is under the state statutes. It's a law for certain infectious diseases to be reported to the Department of Health. And so lice is not on there, but so an outbreak of each of these individual diseases, there is a definition of what an outbreak is. And with COVID, an outbreak is more than 3 cases in a classroom or more than 10% of school-wide. Okay, and so that can look different. The 10% can obviously look different, but what it looks like is high transmission, okay, in the school. And so with these different diseases, there are certain requirements that school nurses have to report that to the Department of Health. So so right now, if in a classroom or in a school, if we see more than 3 cases or we see more than the 10%, we're required to report that to the Department of Health. And so we're in constant communication with Jenny Conathan, who is our liaison at the local health department. And so we're not doing the individual cases, individual case counts, because what we've seen with COVID is around every corner through this COVID pandemic, around every corner, there's a new variant, right? That changes, and it changes it affects our strategies of what we're doing to reduce transmission in the classroom. And so it used to be we did contact tracing, right? So what we look at with every change with COVID, we look at what is effective, okay? But we also look at what's sustainable. So at one point in time, contact tracing was effective, and we were doing really good work of notifying people if there was, notifying families if there was a case of COVID in the classroom, specifically like in the group. And what we see is that it wasn't effective anymore. That work that we were doing, we were already behind. We were days behind in doing the contact tracing. It wasn't sustainable. And so what we've seen now is even with presumptive contact, which was maybe a letter would go out if there was any COVID at all in the classroom, and test kits would go out. So we're already with this newest variant, we're not, it's not accurate because there are more cases than what's being reported. We know that. And it's also, it's not an effective way to stop the spread of the newest variant. And due to the, so once again, due to the nature of the newest variant, it's just not, it's not practical to make, for families to make decisions with these case counts, because if these case counts come out, it's already 2 days behind. You're already 2 days behind, and you can always predict that there are going to be more cases. And so if we do case counts of, let's say, Friday, and we put what those cases were for the week, you can see that there is an increased amount of COVID. But those numbers are not an accurate picture of what's circulating in the community at that time.
So I think you kind of moved into what's going to be in the administrative report. So I didn't want to interrupt you because it's obviously really valuable information. Just want to check, because this is on things that are not on the agenda. So I want to check with Jamie and Robin to see if their questions were asked. And then I noticed that Lana has her hand up as well. So Jamie and Robin, did you get the information that you needed? Or do we need to go put this on an agenda or somehow otherwise try to respond to it?
I saw Robin's hand up. I don't know. I see Lana's hand up. We all were in the same pandemic together. We all went through the history together. I'm looking for solutions with this round of the pandemic. And so as an autoimmune family, looking for strategies to make sure my family is safe, and looking at other public health strategies we've used somewhat effortlessly in the past and ways to adapt. So I didn't get my question answered in a way that helps me understand how we will do what we can in this moment.
Lana?
Yeah, I think I was going to tag on to what Jamie was saying. I was hearing the misunderstanding, and I wanted a sort of point of clarification. It sounds to me that Jamie isn't asking about the larger picture and what we've done or what we're doing, but rather what we're going to do for the immunocompromised family. So similar to an IEP, what will we do for those individual families within which one case will be devastating and disallow them to be in school? And I think that we should hopefully put this on the agenda. And I'm not sure, I know Mark mentioned he's got a report coming up, so hopefully that'll answer some of these questions. But I think it's something that we need to think about, and I put it on an agenda.
Thank you, Lana.
I think we could,
go ahead.
I mean, we can answer that, right?
And I think having an individualized health plan, having communication with the school nurse for immunocompromised families, I think, if in that kind of situation, there would be accommodations based on that individualized health plan, that the school nurse would work with the family and the administrator of a school.
And I would just say, which we actively did last year and have been engaged in this fall as well. And, one of the structures or systems that was created through the pandemic was this element of like weekly professional development and collaboration of school nurses, which led to, Rebecca's position this year, which is nurse leader and COVID coordinator. And we've been able to maintain those weekly Wednesday meetings, which has increased communication between the health office and the principal's office tenfold. So I'm proud of that system that we've built, the leadership from our nurses moving forward. That's what we have in place right now. And like Rebecca was referring to earlier, things have changed throughout the last 3 years. And as things change and as we gain more information, we will do our best to adapt in a timely way.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that information. And again, if you want to add more during the administrative report, that's perfectly fine. The next item is unfinished business. And I need to look at my notes here. And then Kelly's notes. Okay. And the first item is the sexual abuse investigation update. I wanted to give a brief orientation, particularly for Kaya and Ben. This came about from an article that was published in the Commons almost a little over a year ago in August, and then an article, and then there was a letter that was brought to the board, signed by 167 people, and I gotta just find the notes here. That called on the board to make 5 to have 5 responses to the, in response to the detailing of years of grooming and abuse at BUHS that were in the article that was published in the Commons. And we have taken a number of actions to date, and I wanted to go through those briefly and also point out that, well, I'll go through those and then. So the first call was for the district to engage a neutral party to conduct an independent investigation into the abuse of students. And we did that. They also asked that it have a scope extending beyond the past 10 years and commit to the results being shared publicly. We interviewed a number of candidates for investigator, and we identified one and hired her. We also hired an attorney separate from our historically district lawyer, because the district attorney is an office actually, to be independent of, to independently support the investigation. The second was that we engage an independent entity to facilitate a school culture survey for students and faculty and staff, specifically addressing safety, and make the results publicly available. And we engaged Dr. Chris Overtree and a team of researchers from UMass Amherst. They will begin a climate investigation this fall in the district. It will involve individual meeting with principals and school leadership, focus groups with representative groups and students. And while this is happening, they will be conducting a secondary analysis of last year's survey data through the Panorama tool that we've been using and discussing with the administration. Also, it will be based on information from the above meetings and additional questions or tools. It's possible that Panorama may prove to be the best tool. And it now, because we've been using it for a while, it provides additional historical comparative data. It may prove useful to have community parent meetings, though the attendees will likely be a biased sample, so survey may be better. Details and timelines for the 2023 academic year are still being developed. So that is underway. It didn't make sense to even think about doing that last year, given the stress on the system from the second year of the pandemic. The third called on the district to make an ethics hotline available so that students and staff have an independent way to report concerns that does not require them to go through the administration. The hotline was not really a viable option, but we do have a phone number that our investigator, who is also an attorney, responds to calls within 24 hours. They can be made anonymously or not, although obviously the person has to leave contact information. We also have a website and an email set up for people to report concerns. The fourth request was that the board make available to the public on a regular basis to ensure transparency and support of the ongoing assessment of needs, consolidated anonymized data from these reports. Our attorneys and the investigator have consistently advised against that. We have asked them any number of questions and other suggestions that have come to the board. We have forwarded those to the attorney and to the investigator, and we still consistently are told that we should say nothing until the reports are finished and ready to be public. And the fifth was the district was called upon to work with and pay qualified community organizations who will engage directly with those harmed to determine appropriate actions. And we have done that. We have a relationship with the Women's Freedom Center, and the administration has developed a number of approaches that we'll hear about also during the administrative report to help facilitate that process. So I just wanted to give that update that on 4 of those, we've made significant steps. And on the 5th, we are advised by people that we trust, and we just have to believe to wait to provide information. So I don't know if there are any questions regarding that information, I would be happy to entertain them. We're not going to have we'll see what the questions are, but I'm not intending to have a conversation about the letter or the findings, but especially since we're running short on time. But I wanted to get that information out to our new members and provide some historical context and also just a summary of what we have done. And I think that there'll probably be more coming in a general format. And the actual reports of the investigative findings will come when they're ready.
I could give an update on training and approaches that we've taken to start this school year.
That would be great.
Thanks, Mark. And kind of remove it from the admin report and fit it in here. So during our August administrative retreat, we made a formal commitment as a team to formalize our approach in how we train and provide outreach as a system. And train, I mean professional development with staff, how we connect with students, and how we conduct outreach with our families. This past Friday, we had our first full admin meeting since our retreat. We dedicated time during that meeting to get an update from each school. Each school reported out on trainings that have taken place or that are in the books to be taken place, to take place soon. Next Wednesday, I'll be meeting with all of the elementary principals to get another formal check-in on where elementary schools are with their training. And the same meeting will take place with the BU6 campus on Tuesday morning. So I would say it's fair to say within the next week or two, all of our school staff will have been formally trained around what Act 1 is and how we're approaching Act 1 and supporting one another's with working towards that law. Moving forward, in terms of next steps, we are formally dedicated to taking a look at this on a monthly basis and using our full admin monthly meeting to conduct and consistent training around grooming, around working with our staff, inviting our social workers, inviting our counselors to join those meetings and help provide some leadership around some tabletop exercises that we can do as an admin team to set an example to then bring back to our individual staffs. Another next step that we're thinking about is community outreach. And how do we formally share what we've done, what we're doing, and what we're moving towards? And we do have open houses coming up the end of September, beginning of October in all of our schools. So we haven't talked as a team about that yet, but I think there could be an avenue to do some outreach there in terms of highlighting the professional development that we've engaged in so far. So as we conduct this work, we're trying to build resources and systemize it moving forward so that we're not having individual approaches at each school each year, but we're collaborating with one another to identify, best practice around systems work so that in the years to come, we have a schedule and an outline of what that work looks like. And I think there's much work to be done on what that work looks like with our students. And clearly there's a range from pre-K to 12th graders. It needs to look different at those different school sites. So we're in the process of building up our resources, but I'm happy where we are. I think it's a different approach than we've taken in years past. It's more formalized, it's more systemized. And I want to thank Kate for being our Title IX coordinator and really taking the lead in that work for us. But I can certainly report out again in a few months to share where we are. But I hope that gives a better picture to how we're approaching this school year in a more school system approach than each individual school. We do have the UHS here to present their Act 1 training as well, if there's time for that.
Any questions from the board?
About COVID, is this the appropriate time to bring up COVID? Is the admin report that?
No.
Okay.
We're talking about the sex abuses.
Right, okay.
you mind if I ask a quick question?
No, please do.
So I know this might not fit in with the scope of this meeting specifically, but I think I've heard from a few of my peers, I'm not sure if you feel this way, Kai, too, but about students not being able to comfortably address concerns they have about inappropriate actions from staff members. I think the biggest issue with that is that the students felt like there might have been retaliation in the future, and felt really uncomfortable putting their name on a report or anything that they were attached to. So I think that's something I want to definitely keep in mind. Maybe not for this meeting, but in the future.
Yeah, it's great.
Mark, is that a visible part of the training or part of the program that you're working on?
Absolutely. I would see that as an outcome of systems that we develop as a team. I mean, student voice is clearly super important. And I'm glad that you felt comfortable saying that here today in a public meeting. That's a good first step.
Other questions from the board? Administrators?
Questions from the public?
Not yet. Just wait. Yeah. Okay. Mindy Haskins-Rogers had her hand up.
Hi,
ahead.
thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I also am really glad is that Ben who spoke up? I had a comment and then a question. One comment that I've heard is that whenever you do the outreach to communicate to current families and caregivers the opportunity to report, it's been mentioned that possibly putting some kind of notice for students in the bathrooms might be helpful, like a private place that kids could see that there's an opportunity to report. And also what occurred to me is that I don't know that kids use that they call anybody anymore or use email that much. And I'm wondering if there's another way that we, I don't have a solution, but if there's another kind of digital outreach that could happen or be made available so that students can maybe text somebody or do something anonymously, because my impression is that kids don't make phone calls very often, and that takes a certain level of courage, and they might be afraid of their voice being identified or something. So that was just a thought. And it just happens that Ben talked about that fear of retaliation too. So I hope that there can be some creative thinking, and maybe the students on the board have some ideas about what might work in terms of creating opportunities for students to safely report.
Yeah.
And the question I had, David, was, did you say that there might be a release of some more general information soon about the investigation?
Let me just think what I meant by that. I think in more general in terms of things that we're doing on a larger scope, like some of the things that Mark talked about, more information about those kinds of things, more specificity. I'm not sure. I mean, as information becomes available, we'll put it out. But I think what we're going to try to do is keep reminding people of the things that we are doing, and the fact that the resources are there and they're expanding, and also that the hotline and the website and the email are still there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then Ben had a response to.
In response to that, I would really love to talk to our administrators, first at the high school level, but then extending about how we can have these conversations in more intimate settings and smaller groups and settings that can't be as easily overlooked. So maybe advisory, maybe we'll talk about it, but I think that getting communication to students too is going to be something that I'm really passionate about and want to focus on.
I think you're right about the comfortable setting part. We're going to get more ideas and more problem solving in settings that are a little more intimate.
And I think too, the student advisory committee that meets tomorrow night is a great place to start that work.
And, keeping us administrators in the loop. Definitely.
Expanded into through your contacts to the advisory committees. Yeah. Contacts expanded to more students. Yes, Lisa.
Lisa from Guilford. So I think I brought this up before, and I think you mentioned the idea of a timeline, but I just wonder if you're going to start putting a timeline together, and then also will you be doing more promotions than just the press release to kind of boost this process? Because my understanding is that you're collecting information that can show you what's not working. So even if the trainings are happening right now, there may be a lot to learn from what isn't working. So, is there a timeline, and are you boosting the promotions and giving yourselves a timeline so that you know when you will receive a report?
We haven't followed up on the promotion that we did a few weeks ago, the press release and public service announcement. And we haven't talked yet about whether we wanted to send that press release out to the entire school community or not, because we wanted to hear from the administration about what their plans were. So we haven't considered those things, but thank you, we will. I can't say what a timeline. We haven't considered that because we don't have any control over it. But it's a consideration. I know it's been a year, but at the same time, we have done a lot of things, and we've made a lot of progress. So I think I can't really respond to the timeline. Certainly, it's something that we can consider.
I'm just wondering, who will decide? Like, will the attorney say, well, we've talked to 1,000 people, so now that's enough? Or like, who decides when?
We can't possibly speculate on that. With the attorney, the investigator has asked us to wait until she's finished. So she has finished the reports. And we've asked her to follow the information where it leads. We've asked her to protect the privacy, the anonymity of the reporters. And that's pretty much the guidance that we have given her. And we just did this outreach, and we'll reassess. We'll meet and reassess and consider as we go. And we've been doing that all along. The thing that's consistently stayed the same is the message that to protect the district, obviously, and equally important to protect the privacy of the reporters. They strongly advise us not to release any information. So that's where we are. Yes, would you say your name, please, and where you're from?
Yes, I'm Cyrus. I'm a junior at UHS. I've been listening to the meetings on Zoom all summer. So I heard about the press release, and I was wondering, I don't think any of the other students have really heard about reporting and how to report, and I think it would be very helpful if there was an email blast sent out, because I know the administrators have all the emails of the students, and they can just click on all the classes and send it out to all the classes of UHS. And I think an email blast would be the most efficient way to give that information to all the students, because our emails are very important. That's how we receive all our information about school events and other things. And I think this is very important to get into the whole community of the school so that they can report what they need to.
Any other comments from the public board administrators? Yes, Tim?
I'm really anxious, as you know, to hear the Act 1 plan at the UHS, but we're running out of time tonight. Is there a PowerPoint or something that you can send ahead of time? And
Yeah, it was shared. But I can share it again. Yeah, and it's actually the PowerPoint that I shared is what we did with the staff. I was just gonna, it's long. I mean, we spent a good chunk of time with the staff going over it. My SAP, Ricky Davidson, is here, and I brought him to sort of just give a brief, not too brief, a detailed sort of overview of what that training looked like and what we accomplished. And we have more Act 1 and Safe Boundaries training planned for, I think October 11th is the first PD day. And so we're going to talk about what that looks like moving forward.
May I suggest that we postpone that to the next meeting?
So again, Tim,
May I suggest that we postpone that to the next meeting to give adequate time for it?
Sure. I did want to include Ricky Davidson. I think it's important to recognize him and the other staff members that worked on it. But in respect for his time, he may not be available that evening. So, I mean, I guess I can say it now. Ricky put a lot of time and energy into this.
I hate Ricky to come.
But I'm open to that.
I'll figure it out. We need to take a look.
Thank you, Ricky.
The slideshow was shared with Kelly last Thursday. I believe she forwarded it along to the board members.
thank you. Mindy, briefly, we're running out of time.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask David, you just mentioned that the attorneys have advised withholding any information until the investigation is complete and the protection of privacy of the people reporting. But before you mentioned that, you mentioned the protecting the district, the purpose of protecting the district. And I'd just like you to explain what you mean by that, if possible. In what way are you working to protect the district while this investigation is taking place?
Yeah, well, even talking about that jeopardizes the district. One of the first things that we were advised to do, we started after the call, after your article and after the call for action from the 167 people that signed that letter, was the advice was check into your insurance and take your liability. And we don't have liability insurance before, I think it's 1989, but I'm not certain. But there's a point where we don't have records and the insurance companies don't have records. So we are, and we know that we've been informed that we're going to face 2 lawsuits at least. So we have to be very careful that we don't say or do anything that would jeopardize our liability insurance coverage. And we already know that we're being sued and we don't have insurance to cover any settlements that might come in those cases. And we want to avoid having to use program money and this, again, I'm not going to go very far with this, but we don't want to have to lay people off or cut programs to pay for the sins of the past and make the students of these days pay for those sins. So we have to be very careful about what we say and don't say. If we are sued, we don't hire lawyers. We have a contract with insurance companies. They handle those cases. We have nothing to do with it. And if we should do things that jeopardize their ability to prosecute those cases, they can cancel our insurance. So we're being very careful.
So what do you mean by?
Go ahead.
I'm wondering, first of all, who advised you in that, to check the insurance, and also what are the things that you're not doing? For example, does that mean that you won't be naming perpetrators from prior to 1989? Does that mean that you are withholding information about the abuse from prior to that year?
No, none of that. No.
Okay.
No, none of any of that.
And who advised you at that point? Who's advising on? Is that
everybody the attorneys, the investigator, and our consultant? They all advise us, and the insurance companies. They all had this exact same thing.
So Pietro Lynn, Attorney Hext, Attorney Goddard, and Dr. Overtree? Is Mr. Overtree?
It's not relevant. It's not necessary to bring names into the conversation. It's not relevant. So we're not gonna.
You're not going to say who's advising the board on these matters?
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. We are at 2 minutes to 8. We will need a motion to extend the meeting for a specific period of time. Is anyone be willing to make that motion? Tim?
I move that we extend the meeting to 8:15 in order to your policy business. Get that done.
Is there a second? Thank you, Deborah. It's been moved by Tim and seconded by Deborah to extend the meeting until 8:15 so that we can manage our policy actions and policy first readings, and we need to finish our administrative report as well. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of extending the meeting until 8:15, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Please indicate by saying nay. Hearing none, the ayes have it, and we will extend for 15 minutes. And I'm gonna move the agenda. If you, at least if you would send a question or your concern by email, I appreciate that. Thank you. So we are on to the Policy and Amendment Committee, Board Action on F12 Transportation Readoption, F23 Prevention of Harassment, Hazing, and Bullying of Students Readoption, Participation of Home Study Students in School Programs and Activities Readoption, Policy on Section 504 and ADA Grievance Protocol for Students and Staff, Adoption, and H1 School Community Relations Readoption. And Deborah, would you like to say anything about those policies and
I
maybe
do.
clarify
Before
why
there-
some are adopted?
There are 5 policies, and before I make a motion, I just want to point out a couple of them. The first one being F26, which is participation of home study students in school programs and activities. The entire policy is in red, indicating that the Policy and Amendment Committee is retaining the original wording of the policy and rejecting the Vermont School Board Association edits, which whittled the policy down to nothing. And our view is more is better with that particular policy. These are all policies that the community has seen for well over 10 days. So we are in the first reading or past the first reading. The other policy that I want to make note of is F41, which is a policy for adoption. It's a new policy. It's mandated, required by the Vermont School Board Association, and it has to do with grievance protocol for students and staff.
I just want a brief interruption. It's actually required by the state of Vermont, and the language is recommended by the School Board Association.
Required by the state of Vermont. Thank you. And the final one that I want to make a note of is H1, which is school community relations. And at the very beginning, there is new wording, and it says, in accordance with current legislation, all meetings of the WSESD board, committees, and leadership councils shall be accessible remotely. Important that it says in accordance with current legislation. So that affects all of us in terms of how we conduct business, that the community needs to have access to these meetings remotely. Those are the highlights of policies that are well beyond the first reading. So with that in mind, I move that the WSESD School Board approve for readoption, and in the case of F41 adoption, of the policies that were presented by David Scholes. They were originally presented for first reading at the August 23rd board meeting. The 10-day warning period has passed with no objection. I so move that these policies be approved by the board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. It's been moved by Deborah and seconded by Tim that we adopt these policies and readopt. Yes.
I
Lindy.
request that Ms. Stanford send those to me via
Yes,
email.
I'll send
please.
that this
Okay,
evening.
Great. Yes, it was lengthy. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Mhm.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, indicate by saying nay. Hearing none, the ayes have it and the policies are adopted. Item C on unfinished business is Leadership Council Summit with principals, LC chairs, members of leadership councils. And this, Deborah, remind me, this came up at the Amendment and Policy Committee and Mark.
So I think we actually had the idea of maybe eliminating that item, but looking towards establishing a date where leadership council chairs could come down to central office, meet with myself, principals, Barb Nowakowski, and talk about the structure of leadership council meetings, what is in place at the different leadership councils, just to get a better understanding of how we're all operating and try to come up with kind of a standard operation.
Great, thank you. Any questions about that or concerns? It sounds like.
And I just want to add to that, that is on the part of administration to gather that information and then pass it along to the policy committee. But that is very much in the domain of administration, working out the protocols.
Speaking of administration, administrative report.
Okay, I'll try to be quick and direct. Would just like to highlight, we're off to a very good start to the school year this year. And it feels a little different than last year. A level of anxiety, and a knock on wood when I say anything like this, it just feels differently in the hallways. An example I keep sharing, last Friday night at the football game out here, aside from the game itself, the highlight to me was this incredible student section that was totally full. The kids were dressed up, and Kaya and Ben can share more about that if they want. But the students are dedicated to identifying different themes throughout the year and to encourage participation and to be cheering on their peers. And I guess I would just like to publicly say, I would encourage that of our community. Given what our kids have been through over the past 3 years, the more people we can get to any type of event to cheer them on and give them that positive reinforcement, the better for our community. Whether it's a sporting event, an open house, theater events, anything. We should really be identifying those as adults and providing that role modeling that frankly the kids are doing for us right now. And I just thought Friday night was such a cool thing to witness, and I just felt like sharing that publicly because there are many more opportunities coming up. That being said, I would like to, I'm happy to report that local attendance committee is back up and running after a 3-year hiatus due to COVID. But Emily Kornheiser, state representative, has been facilitating work around truancy with our schools for a few years now. And we had our first meeting in approximately 3 years yesterday. And the goal is to meet on a monthly basis. And the folks at that, it's open meeting to anybody to come. But school personnel attends the meeting, youth services, HCRS, local agencies. And the kind of the themes that we're looking at is student and family engagement. And how do we collaborate as organizations to share best practice around that? Because we do know just the nature of COVID. So many teachers have missed time in schools due to protocols, as well as students as well. So You know, for 2 years, we were saying, don't come in our building. That's the guidance and that's the protocol. Now we're kind of shifting that. How do we re-engage and get families back into our buildings on a more consistent basis? And always keeping student engagement on the forefront of the work that we're doing around truancy. So more to come on that throughout the year. Cassie can jump in on this, but BUHS was just recognized late last night. They received national recognition through the Special Olympics through Achievements of Inclusion.
Yeah, so we have a great unified sports program. I cannot take any credit for it. We have an amazing staff. Just name a few: Tyler Boone, Erica Bassett, and Lauren Allenbear are 3 of our staff members that are just have really worked to develop this program. We have 7 unified teams. My favorite event when I started at BUHS is that during the basketball season, our block 4, we actually have a unified basketball game that teachers have to sign up to bring their classes to, because we found that we couldn't fit everyone into the gym at one time, and it's kind of competitive, but it's to get there. The game itself is probably less competitive, but it's an amazing, just very inclusive. Our school is just great. So there was a lot of work that went into getting this status. So we're a banner school. I think we're the first banner school in Southern Vermont to be recognized by the Special Olympics. And it's not just the sports teams. There was a whole bunch of criteria that really had to be met. I would love if I could come back with Tyler Boone to help sort of explain more of what that looked like, because we had to, meet certain standards in terms of inclusive practices and how we incorporated that into a school and how we supported that in our school and how we grew it. But it's great for our school community. And it's not just the unified program being recognized, it's actually the entire BUHS community. So we will be having a celebration in the future, and I will share that date with all of you, where we can bring in the community to really, show what we do and how important it is.
Just make sure we.
Oh, definitely.
Want to say I was thrilled by that announcement. You national recognition. It's really great for the high school. So congratulations.
So I spoke to our first admin meeting of the year. We continued the foundational work that was set forward in August with a very new administrative team this year. So we used Friday for a formal check-in on progress that we're making to start the year around MTSS, EST, diversity and equity standards, check-in for Act 1, HHB, Title IX training, professional development that we're entertaining in our schools around curriculum and data collection expectations. And then finally, we've started to set into motion an outline for how peer observation can have a positive impact on all of those initiatives. So just give a sense of the work that we're doing and how we're approaching the school year. Website update. Paul has been our, he's right there. Paul has been our go-to in terms of working directly with the company that we hired, Rainstorm. We're making really good progress. Paul, you want to spend a minute on that? Just kind of share where we are?
Sure. At this point, we've got through the contract with Rainstorm, it's now in May. We've got a sort of an initial framework skeleton for the website. We're now going to be eliciting responses from different departments to get more as to what content the description of the website needs to say, what needs to be different, what new pieces need to be in place. And part of the contract will be, as we build out new pieces of the website, Rainstorm will provide us this templates so that the look and feel of the website is the same, but we can bring in new content as we.
And the board is expecting to be consultants.
Absolutely.
Before I end on COVID, because I'm sure there may be some more questions. Some of the challenges that we're facing moving forward is, at Oak Grove School, Mary will be going on maternity leave soon. We're still developing a plan for supporting Oak Grove moving forward. I think it's well known at BOHS, we have 3 administrators. Typically, we have 4. So we are looking at internal and external opportunities to add more resources to both school sites, Oak Grove and BUHS. BUHS specifically, things are going really well, but a lot of hours and a lot of time is being put into that, and a lot of hours on weekends as well. So just want to acknowledge that we are continuing to look at ways to provide more support specifically in leadership at Oak Grove and BUHS. And again, we're looking internally and externally as well. That's where we are. COVID, I think, Rebecca really, I think, handled most of that. So I guess it's just an opportunity for more questions or clarification.
So it also, I think it's probably going to come up next time too.
Yeah.
I think we still have absentee issues and changing advice from the state. So it'll come up.
Probably routinely throughout the year. Yeah.
It is very brief. I really appreciated Nurse Olmstead's report that went along with your letter to the community. Thank you so much for submitting that. One concern that came out of that was the only 35% of Windham students from age 5 to 12, from 12 to 17 are vaccinated. That's just so sadly low. And I appreciate Rebecca, your emphasis on prevention, telling the community the best thing that they can do is to get vaccinated. So I hope that that campaign really continues strongly. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Frank, do you have a fiscal report?
I could give just a 2-minute report. We got 1, so I can give you a 1.
Oh, we're gonna do the report.
Okay, well, Wendy does a great job with minutes of meetings. We had a finance committee meeting earlier at 5 this evening. So feel free to review those minutes, but it basically was an update on several of our capital projects, along with approval of the warrants. And the only other thing I'll mention is I had reported last meeting on status of the fiscal year end, fiscal year 22 as of June 30th. And next week we'll be submitting data and having our CPA auditors on site at the central office for the official audit. I expect that to be wrapped up in October and share the reporting with the board.
Thank you. I need, due to our rain delay, I need a motion once again to extend the meeting for 5 minutes. I believe we can cover the remaining items in that time.
So made.
Motion from Tim to extend the meeting by 5 minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Deborah. It's moved and seconded to extend the meeting for 5 minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing no nays, we will extend for 5 minutes. First, Deborah, would you tell us in the new business about the C7 and D7 policies that we are now proposing for?
The following policies are officially presented for first reading. C7, which is board relations with administrators, and D7, which is volunteers and work study students. I need to take a pause on D7. The entire school district, administrators, families, board members should note the significant change addition to this policy. Currently, all volunteers and work study students must pass the screening process conducted by the Vermont Agency of Human Services, Adult Protective Services Registry, and Child Abuse Registry Unit. it is important to note in D7, the procedures page that immediately follows it, and the paragraph in the middle in red needs to be strictly adhered to. Any volunteer who has, and this is part of the policy as it exists, any volunteer who has unsupervised contact with students must undergo a criminal records check. This includes any volunteer who is transporting a student or students to an off-site school event. And the section reads, transportation of students within a 20-mile radius of the school may be provided by a volunteer, provided that A, the volunteer has undergone a full Vermont Crime Investigation Center background check, or B, a second adult traveling in the vehicle has undergone the VCIC background check, that is a school employee. Transportation beyond the 20-mile radius must be provided via contracted service. There are several board members right now who are currently undergoing a full criminal records check in anticipation of our mentoring BUHS students, the student reps on the board, as well as the student advisory committee. I and others were fingerprinted on Thursday, September 8th. Until I am fully vetted, a process of several weeks, any contact I have with students will be in the presence of a staff member who has, by virtue of employment, undergone this full criminal investigation. The goal of this policy and its significant change is to guarantee the safety of all students in the WSESD. So with the policy C7 and D7, we are now in the 10-day warning period for both policies. If there are any concerns or questions, please contact any board member, and the board members specifically on the Policy and Amendment Committee are myself, Deborah Stanford, Tim Maciel, David Scholes, Liz Adams, and Sean Murphy. And again, contact any board member with concerns that you have. Again, these policies are on the website. Please read them.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Next is the application for equity grant currently offered by VSBA. I understand that this is an initiative from Lana and Sean. And I have a sample motion here that I'd like to read and see if, unless, Sean, do you, okay, great. I asked for a motion that the WSESD board certify Lana Dever and Sean Murphy to pursue the application of the equity grant currently offered by the VSBA. And I have that motion, please. Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. It's been moved and seconded that the WSESD board certify Lana Dever and Sean Murphy to pursue the application of the equity grant currently offered by the VSBA. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate by saying nay.
Mr. Chair, can you send me the wording on that via email?
I can.
Thank you.
So the motion is passed. And the last item, not the last item, but the next item is board trainings. We have 2 more restorative justice sessions with Mel Motel from Youth Services and the Brattleboro Community Justice Center yet to be scheduled. A doodle poll will be sent out shortly with some proposed dates in early October. Thank you, Lana. I don't believe there are any committee updates. I was not advised of any committee updates. And there's an executive session on the agenda, but I don't, you have something, contracts? Yeah, I think that was, we don't need that executive session, so our business is complete. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So
moved. Liz, thank you. Moved by Liz, seconded by Tim, that we adjourn at 8:22. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We are adjourned.